Well, my name is Jane Heine, and my son is Dan Heine. Our experience with fraternities was really limited, and having my brother in a fraternity and comparing it to my son, I was not at all thinking he should be in a fraternity, because he was a good kid in high school. He wasn't a partier. You know, he had a small group of friends. He was, you know, what the classic kind of geeky, nerdy math guy, and to me, thinking of him in a fraternity was scary. But we toured the school, and then the idea was to come back and tour where he could live, so he was going to either have to live in a dorm or consider a fraternity. So we did 2 days of touring. It was the last fraternity we went to, and at that time, Sigma Pi was still in the old house, which was not really nice. It was really old. It was the guys. There were 3 guys there that met him, and he just kind of clicked with them, and I was really relieved. They seemed like Dan, like kind of his kind of guys, and they, you know, a couple guys playing video games, and just the way they talked, it was really welcoming. To me, a fraternity of guys all on their own is just kind of asking for a lot of partying, and I thought that's what would happen. I thought he would party and then fail classes and end up back at home in a year or less, and he didn't do that. And in fact, it was neat because they do hold them to a higher standard. They all kind of band together and they help each other. He said for sure, and he said it many times, that if it hadn't been for the fraternity, he wouldn't have passed. He didn't think he would have passed through S&T. He thinks he would have failed out. But that helped him so much to have buddies saying, okay, at this time you have to. Because if you're not, they're like, what are you doing? Why aren't you studying? You're not gonna bring us down. You know, that's a big deal. He did have some buddies that went into the dorm and stayed in dorms the entire 4 years. We knew them from his high school. And it is completely different. One of them has gone back to live at home. He has a job, but he's living at home. And I think, you know, they were secluded. Living in the fraternity forced him to have to make those bonds and relationships that I think in the dorm living he wouldn't have had to do, because he's not, you know, he's not an introvert, but he sure isn't an extrovert. Job searching was a big thing. You know, they say it all the time. They would hear that message from alumni, hey, you guys, just reach out, just ask. And so I'd push a little bit. I think that was one of the big parts of him being able to get a job right out of college, is having that. He did get a scholarship, and that was another thing that you, when you get a scholarship, it makes you feel like you have to, okay, you're honored by it, and you have to meet that expectation. So that was helpful. That was definitely helpful to him too. And they have their a certain older student that is matched with each one that checks in on them. I think his was Marty, and Marty would check in on him and be like, Dan, how you doing? Especially when he was struggling with Calc 2. That was brutal, and he was so worried, and they would help him every step of the way. You know, I'm happy to share that with parents now, because even people that I know from our little community going to S&T, they look at me, parents will look at me like I'm absolutely crazy when I talk about fraternities. And I'm like, that was not our experience. It wasn't my brother's experience. They had the partying from the movies is not what's happening anymore.